It was a bright afternoon, sunlight streaking through clouds like ribbons of hope in a world that had all but forgotten what hope was. The only sound in the air was the sharp buzz of alien drones, their metallic hum punctuating the eerie silence. James Sutherland, wearing a tattered button-up and a pair of too tight khakis, stood in the middle of what could only be described as an extraterrestrial breeding facility. No, that wasn't a typo. This wasn't a government-sponsored human reproduction center. This was the real deal. He was supposed to be there undercover, a journalist on the inside of one of the most bizarre alien invasions the world had ever witnessed. And yet, as James surveyed the scene before him, he couldn't help but think the entire situation was absurd. That he was surrounded by a group of men, humans, sitting in rows, as if waiting for a train to take them to their fate. They were dressed in ridiculous, mismatched uniforms, half of them too oversized, the other half too small. They were a far cry from the idealized version of human warriors you might expect to see in any sci-fi film. Instead of being forced into combat, these men had been corralled into one of the most degrading situations imaginable, a forced reproductive program designed by the aliens. Or, as they called it, the breeding flow. You'd think the atmosphere would be filled with dread, but, curiously, there was a lot of sarcasm and offbeat humor among the men. One of them, a man with a scruffy beard and a tattoo that looked like it had been drawn by a child, slouched against the wall. He flicked a lighter, sending a puff of smoke into the air, and said, "You know, if this is the afterlife, I'm demanding a refund." James raised an eyebrow, then smirked. Not the afterlife. Just the New World Order. The bearded man, whose name was likely something ridiculous like Terry, because it always was, gave him a look. Right. New World Order, except we're all here because we've been reduced to the status of cattle. And not even the cute kind. Is there a cute kind of cattle? James asked, genuinely curious. Only the ones with big, sad eyes, Terry replied with a mock sigh. Look, I'm just saying. We didn't ask for this. They show up, blow up a few cities, tell us we're too primitive to reproduce on our own, and now we're, what, sperm donors? Breeding cattle? He let out a humorless laugh. Honestly, the only thing missing is a branded label on my ass. James didn't know how to respond, because Terry wasn't wrong. Humans, reduced to cattle. It was a reality far worse than anyone had anticipated when the aliens first arrived. And yet, here they were, living in it. His job was to uncover the truth, to get inside this breeding flow system and see what was really going on. At least, that's what he told himself. In reality, he wasn't sure what the truth even was anymore. In the face of alien invaders who had twisted humanity into something barely recognizable, what was the point of fighting? Before James could dive any deeper into his thoughts, a voice echoed through the loudspeakers, "Human male subject S32, please report to breeding room 7B." James suppressed a wince as the man next to him, a tall and muscular guy who looked like he had once been a football player, stood up with a roll of his eyes. "Well, guess I'm up," the man muttered, giving James a half-hearted salute. "If this is the worst thing that happens to me today, I'll count myself lucky." He trudged toward the door. James looked back at the group of men. Some looked resigned, others angry, but all of them seemed to have come to terms with their fate. It was easier to accept the absurdity of it all than to fight it. Everyone here had been picked. Hand-chosen by the aliens for their genetic potential, though none of them were ever really told what the aliens were planning to do with them. It was all part of the grand scheme. The breeding flow was about human propagation, or so they were told. But that wasn't the truth. Not even close. James had learned that much. He was here to find out the rest of the story, why the aliens had done this, why they had wiped out human civilization the way they had, and why they thought they could just start over like this. To use humans as cattle. It wasn't right. And James wasn't going to stand by while humanity was left to rot in these pens. He might not have much hope left, but he wasn't going to let the aliens erase everything. As the door slid shut behind the man who'd just been summoned to 7B, James turned his attention back to the center of the facility. The breeding flow wasn't just about biology, it was about control. And what better way to control people than by reducing them to their most basic instincts? His thoughts were interrupted by the soft, mechanical whir of footsteps approaching. A sleek, silver alien appeared at the entrance to the room, a long, wiry creature with an elongated neck and too many eyes for comfort. It was Omarok, one of the higher-ranking officials in charge of human propagation. The alien's expression was unreadable, but there was a certain satisfaction in its gaze. Like a scientist proud of an experiment, human male subject James Sutherland, Omarok's voice echoed through the room. You've been selected for a special meeting. Please follow me. James stood up, his heart pounding. He wasn't expecting this. Not today, not like this. But he had been waiting for an opportunity, and this might be it. He had to play along, get inside Omarok's head, find out what the aliens were really after. He straightened himself, plastering on a forced smile. Sure. Lead the way. As he followed Omarok down the sterile, chrome-lined hallways, his mind raced. He wasn't sure what was going to happen in this meeting, but it had better be worth it. The alien led him into a small, private room. There was a table in the center, and at the far end sat a chair made of some unidentifiable material. Omarok gestured toward the chair, and James, feeling like a puppet, sat down. Mr. Sutherland, Omarok began, I understand you've been conducting an investigation. You've been poking around in places you shouldn't be. James shrugged nonchalantly. Hey, a reporter's gotta do what a reporter's gotta do, right? Omarok tilted its head slightly, as if confused by the casual tone. You must understand that humans cannot comprehend the broader scope of our mission. We've been generous in allowing you to exist. The breeding flow was necessary to prevent your species from extermination. You should be grateful. Grateful? James couldn't help but laugh, a little louder than he intended. You wipe out our cities, destroy everything we know, and then expect us to thank you for treating us like livestock. The alien's many eyes blinked in an almost curious way. It was for your own good. You were, Omarok hesitated, as if trying to find the right word. Primitive. But you have potential. We gave you a second chance. James leaned forward. A second chance? To be your cattle? No, I don't think so. This whole system, it's not just about propagation, is it? Omarok didn't answer at first. It studied James with those too many eyes, as if trying to figure out what to say. Then, finally, the alien spoke. No, Mr. Sutherland. It was never about propagation. It was about control. James felt his pulse quicken. Control. The word sent a shiver down his spine. He had suspected something wasn't right, but to hear it stated so plainly by one of the aliens, with that cold, matter-of-fact tone, it was almost too much to process. Omarok's many eyes blinked slowly, a deliberate motion that felt more ominous than curious. The alien's voice took on a deeper, almost patronizing quality. You see, human males like you, and all of your kind, really, you're not just breeding stock. You're a resource. You're a means to an end. The breeding flow was just the first phase in our grand plan. A way to ensure your species would remain dependent on us. James didn't move. He didn't blink. His mind raced, processing everything Omarok was saying. So, let me get this straight, James said, his voice a little too calm for how he felt. You're telling me this whole breeding program, this abomination, wasn't about saving humanity. It was about turning us into slaves? An experiment? Omarok's lips, a thin, almost imperceptible slit on its face, pulled upward. It was supposed to be a smile, but it looked more like a grimace. Exactly. The breeding flow is just the start. You see, after your species is sufficiently domesticated, we will move to the next phase. Your memories will be erased. Your past will be wiped clean, and will begin to re-educate your kind. Your autonomy will vanish. Your resistance will fade. And then, you will be nothing more than a loyal resource to serve us. James' heart thudded. He had been right to investigate, but even he hadn't imagined anything this monstrous. You think you can just rewrite us, James said, leaning forward, pushing against the table. You think you can erase everything we've ever been, every piece of history, culture, everything, and we'll just roll over? You're mistaken. Omarok's eyes narrowed. We've done it before. On countless worlds. Your species is no different. James couldn't help it. He laughed, a bitter, mocking sound that filled the room. Really? And how's that worked out for you so far? The alien tilted its head. Your people have always been weak in the face of our power. But the breeding flow, once fully integrated, will ensure that no further resistance is possible. You will submit willingly. I don't think you've been paying attention, James said, eyes burning with a sudden, fierce clarity. The thing about humanity, about people like me, like the ones you think you're controlling, is that we remember. Even when you try to erase us, we'll come back. We'll always come back. Omarok stared at him, its many eyes flickering with what James could only describe as frustration, or was it disbelief? It seemed almost taken aback by his words. You overestimate your species, the alien said, its tone colder now. We have already predicted your every move. Resistance is futile. James didn't flinch. He wasn't sure how, but something deep inside him stirred. His instincts screamed that this was his moment, the pivot point where everything could change. He had to push back, not just for himself but for all of humanity. If he didn't act now, if he didn't expose the truth, humanity's fate would be sealed. What if I told you, James said, voice steady but intense, that I already know the truth? That I've seen what you're hiding? That I know exactly how your plans will fail? Omarok blinked again, its eyes darting ever so slightly, the alien's posture stiffening. Explain yourself. James stood, his pulse now a thrum in his ears. You think we'll fall in line because you've wiped our memories, erased our past, and turned us into docile breeders, but you've forgotten something important. He paused, his gaze burning into the alien. You've forgotten the power of truth. Because even if you erase our memories, you can't erase our ability to question. You can't take away our curiosity. Omarok's expression didn't change. But there was something in the way its many eyes flickered, like a brief crack in its calm facade. We have anticipated your kind's desire to resist. And yet, it will not matter. The memory wipe will be complete. You will forget who you are, and you will become, as we have planned. No, James said, feeling a surge of adrenaline. He had to do this. He had to expose everything. You're wrong. Because there's something you missed. The one thing you didn't account for. Omarok's lips twitched. And what is that? Your mistake, James said, his voice rising, is that you thought humanity would forget its history, its identity. But the truth is, no matter how much you try to suppress it, we'll always find a way to remember. You didn't break us. You've only made us stronger. Omarok took a step back, its many eyes narrowing. There was a brief flicker of something, panic? Fear, before the alien regained its composure. You talk of remembering, but you fail to see the inevitable. You cannot stop what is coming. No resistance you could ever muster will matter. James wasn't sure what happened next, whether it was a calculated move on his part or pure instinct, but he knew what he had to do. He lunged forward, grabbed the small device on the table, a data recorder used by the aliens to monitor the humans, and slammed it into the console beside him. Sparks flew, and a sharp screeching noise rang through the room as the machine malfunctioned. Omarok recoiled, but it was too late. The damage had been done. What did you just do? Omarok hissed, its voice laced with urgency. I just sent a message, James said, standing taller now, his heart racing. To every human still under your control. They're going to see the truth. The truth about the breeding flow, about your plans. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. For a moment, Omarok seemed frozen. Then, with an unnatural calm, it spoke. You think you can win with this pathetic display? You think your truth will do anything? James didn't answer immediately. He felt a strange, overwhelming sense of calm wash over him. He had done it. It was done. The truth was out there, and no matter what Omarok said or did, humanity would finally know. The alien straightened. This is not over. We will not let you have the last word. You have awakened something in us, something we will deal with. James stared at the creature, a wry grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. You might have thought you were the ones in control. But you're not. You never were. With that, he turned and walked out of the room, knowing that this was only the beginning. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. But humanity had the first step forward now, the truth. James didn't look back as he left the alien stronghold. The truth was out there. It would spread like wildfire, and when it did, the aliens would realize they had underestimated human resilience. Because if there was one thing humans were good at, it was remembering. No matter how much they tried to rewrite history, they couldn't erase what was inside them. They would fight. They would rebel. And no matter how powerful the aliens thought they would never stop humanity from reclaiming its future. The truth had been awakened, and now, humanity would never be the same. The end.